Late July 1845, a whaler ran into two 3-mast ships on the Arctic fringe, and they were gearing up to push deep into the ice. Nobody knew this random meeting would be the last time anyone in the civilized world ever laid eyes on those two vessels. And their trek was about to kick off the biggest sea mystery that'd haunt history for over 170 years. So up next, I'll pull together a century and plus of research and my own animation to recreate this Arctic nightmare. There are no jump scares here, so you can relax, and it's still a spine and tingling mystery that will cool you down. Those two ships together formed the Franklin expedition, sailing out of Britain toward the Arctic. Their goal? Map the unknown Arctic and blaze a northwest passage linking Asia and Europe. Funny enough, the ships were called HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, odd, gloomy names that kinda hinted at the doomed outcome, actually. It was a huge government and backed push, and the vessels were decked out with the latest tech, steam engines, propellers, and all. They even had a water and distilling rig for fresh water and steam heating to keep the crew cozy. In fact, on board they packed a library of over 1,000 books and 3 years' worth of food for everyone. Sure, those 8,000 tins came from a bargain supplier, and they only sealed the deal 7 weeks before setting sail. The boss was Sir John Franklin, who was a rear admiral and a veteran Arctic explorer. This was his third go-end round to the pole. Plus, James Fitzjames was the second in command on HMS Erebus, backing up Franklin. On HMS Terror, the captain was Francis Crozier. Those two aren't the focus of the story just yet. So, as of now, on May 19, 1845, the Franklin expedition weighed anchor, beginning its voyage. With 24 officers and 110 crew, heading toward what was then the unknown edge of the world. Once they hit Greenland, a supply ship that had been tagging along dumped its cargo onto HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, then split. In that window, 5 crew got sick, quit the mission, and sadly hopped on the supply ship back home. Back then, nobody knew that those 5 individuals would end up being the only 5 survivors of the whole thing. After restocking, the crew pressed further into the Arctic Circle. Years later, the plaque that was attached to Franklin's statue read the words "Not here." The snow and white North buried the remains. Brave U.S. Navy, the North's dreaded death gate solemnly greets any bold intruders who dare step near, warning them of the peril that lies beyond. Rest in peace. On July 28, a whaler got the last glimpse of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, and after that the whole crew vanished, as if the ice itself consumed them entirely, leaving no trace behind. What they ran into up north? We'll hold that back for now. If we jump to 1848, after 3 years had passed, the British Navy's rescue crews along with ships from everywhere returned empty-handed. Interestingly enough, the hunt went on for 30 years, and the rescue missions lost more ships and lives than the original crew. And the maps and the passage they never finished? Later crews eventually nailed those. The first clue came to light in the 3rd year of the search, as the team arrived on Canada's Beechy Island and uncovered both the remains of a previous camp and the graves belonging to 3 sailors. So the first piece of the puzzle finally surfaced. Back in 1845, the expedition established a camp on Beechy Island, making preparations for facing their first Arctic winter. After the fall equinox, polar night rolled in, a 6-month blackout that kept the crew in a bleak mood. During that stretch, 3 crew members started coughing blood and struggling to breathe for no clear reason, and they died fast. Although the first crew members died, the sudden loss didn't mess up the plan at all. They buried the 3 right there, left Beechy Island after winter, and then kept going onward. Beech and EY Island's gear and graves only told us that where they went next is still a mystery. By 1854, 9 years missing, the Admiralty announced the whole crew dead and cut off rescue funding. Franklin's wife wasn't buying that. 3 years later, the Fox, financed by her fundraiser, set out, and after 2 years of hunting, they uncovered the Victory Point note hidden among stones on King William Island. It's the first and only message the expedition ever sent out. Now we can piece together the second puzzle of their ordeal. September 46, sailing past King William Island, the crew, used to the rocking life at sea, sensed a weird calm. The ocean iced over, and HMS Erebus and HMS Terror got stuck. After efforts trying to break the ice failed, they just had to face it. Both ships were dead in the water, stuck, and watching their food run down as time went on. They kept praying earnestly for spring to hurry up, because they knew that only when the ice melted could they finally get moving and escape their frozen predicament. But even by the next summer, there was still no sign that the sea had thawed. The pristine ice felt heavier than a black tombstone, swearing to lock them up forever. Soon winter hit again, and when they finally clung to hope in the third spring, the ice was still unbreakable. After being icebound for a year and 7 months, they made the hardest call: abandon ship, leaving HMS Erebus and HMS Terror behind. Now the 105 survivors trekked south, trying to cross the barren north of Canada, in order to get back to civilization. The Victory Point note stops here, oddly noting that Franklin died in 1847, but it gives no cause of death or grave location, and, as written, the first half of the note says everything was fine. After Franklin's death, Fitzjames and Crozier took command, and the day after burying the note, they led the party south. What they went through on that march turns out to be the missing final puzzle piece. To crack the mystery, Explorer Hall spent 10 years gathering hundreds of pages of Inuit testimony about the Franklin expedition. Being native inhabitants of the Arctic, a great many people asserted that they themselves had witnessed the expedition. In fact, those pages scarcely caused any noticeable stir until more than a full century later had elapsed. Fast forward to the 20th century, Professor Owen Beatty found the crew's bones had 10 times the normal lead levels, a clear sign of lead poisoning. 3 years later, after analyzing hundreds of cans left on Beechy Island, he concluded those cheap, Rush tins had poorly soldered lead seams that leached into the food, leading to lethal pneumonia from chronic lead poisoning. A few years on, another scholar added that the ship's seawater distillation system also leached lead into drinking water, worsening the poisoning. Then, in the 1990s, scholar David Woodman dissected the Inuit testimonies from a century earlier, reconstructing the expedition's final days. Also in the 90s, archaeologists examined hundreds of newly unearthed remains, bringing the century-long forensic saga to its closing act. By 1850, the trek continued, but only about 40 survivors remained. In 1993, archaeologists uncovered a new site with roughly 400 human bones, the expedition's lifeboat, loaded with depleted food stores and incapacitated wounded. Just like a decade earlier, those bones showed sky and high lead levels, plus starvation, freezing cold, exhaustion, muscle cramps at night, snowblindness, scurvy, constant torment. What's striking is the parallel cuts and scratches on the bones. Under the polar grind, reason, honor, and morality faded away. The verdict: they were trying to strip meat from bone. Ultimately, it's a tale of humanity's dark side. Even today, there's no proof that they ever made it back to town, a fact that fits the long and standing speculation about their fate. The Franklin expedition was wiped out entirely, with every member of the party perishing during the southward march. So, the mystery seems fully solved. They set sail in 1845 and wintered at Beechy Island. By then, some crew had already died from lead poisoning. Trapped in ice for 1 year 7 months, they quit the ship and trekked south, 1846 and 1848. In 1850, 40 survivors survived, and Inuit reported cannibalism. The last confirmed Inuit sighting was in 1851, when only 4 men were left. In 1852, Inuit possibly spotted the expedition, which by then was reduced to just 2 survivors, and after that, nothing was heard. But is that really the whole story? In 2013, researchers used newer tech to analyze crew bones and nails, finding the lead levels stayed constant throughout their lives. If the old theory bad cans and the distillation system was right, the lead should have spiked in their final years. That doesn't outright refute it, but it seriously shakes the 30-year-old lead-in poisoning hypothesis. The next year, Canada located the wreck of HMS Erebus, and 2 years later, HMS Terror's hull was found, seemingly fate-like, in fact, will rise, and this will allow us to catch a clear glimpse of the Arctic as it existed roughly 170 years ago.